Today's video is one which has been a great source of learning for me, and therefore I hope it is for you too. For the past 2 weeks, there's been one question that's been constantly bugging me. What are upper caste groups so upset about? Why are they agitating? I knew from reading my colleague Sanjay Maurya's reporting that they have an imaginary fear of reverse discrimination, that is Dalits or OBC students filing false cases against upper caste and that backward classes getting protection in these new rules. But it was only when the Supreme Court stayed these rules altogether that I decided to really get into the nitty-gritties of it, and I hope by the end of this video you'll feel better informed too. First, let me clarify why I say imaginary fear of reverse discrimination. That's because none of the protesters, nobody in court has been able to cite a single case of an upper caste person being discriminated against or being harassed by a Dalit. On the other hand, caste discrimination is rampant not just in society in general but on our campuses, and it is constantly rising. The reason why the equity regulations needed to be brought in is because UGC says there's been a 118% rise in caste-based bias in varsities since 2019. That means that while 173 persons complained of harassment in 2019 on campus, the number quickly rose to 378 by 2024. And initially, most of these complaints were resolved, but then the pendency of these are also rising. When at HT we tried to find out what was happening, why were caste-based cases and suicides going up, we found that the problem was one, in these cells where one could take their complaints, they were limited in their ability to take action, and they had a single faculty member in line with UGC's old 2012 equity regulations, and if anyone disagreed, then it went to the HOD, which means it was a bit of a conflict of interest. So, what these rising cases showed us was that 2012 cases and the regulations were not working. And that's why Radhika Vemula and Payal Tadvi, mothers of Rohith Vemula and Payal Tadvi, decided enough was enough, that no other child should suffer like this, that they shouldn't be bullied in the name of caste like their children had. Rohith Vemula in Hyderabad Central University in 2016 and Payal Tadvi in Mumbai's Topiwala Medical College in 2019 ended their lives after sustained bullying about being a Dalit and a tribal. They both had complained about it, but the existing mechanisms were too broken. And so it is, their petition and sustained campaign of these mothers and then judicial intervention that forced the government to come up with the new equity in higher education regulations of 2026. In fact, the court told the government last year to come up with the safeguards. They issued a draft in February, and at the very beginning of the year, on January 13th this year, we had it. So let's just look at it closely to see what was so offensive in it. What led Honorable Chief Justice of India Suryakant and Justice Joy Malia Bagchi to say the regulations are capable of dividing society and will lead to dangerous impacts? Why did they feel that some of the provisions suffer from certain ambiguities and the possibility of their misuse cannot be ruled out? The main problem that protesters had and that led to the stay is the definition of discrimination. Let's take a look at it. It says caste-based discrimination means discrimination only on the basis of caste or tribe against the members of the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and other backward classes. The big difference from the older regulations is that for the first time, the regulations were also taking note of discrimination against OBC students. You may ask that OBC quotas only came in after Mandal agitation. So, are there that many cases of discrimination against backwards other than SC/STs? The answer is yes. In fact, responding in Parliament, the government has said that in the last 5 years, around 4,596 OBCs have dropped out of central universities, 2,066 OBCs from IITs and 163 OBCs from IIMs. And while there is no clear reasons, experts within UGC have pointed out that OBC students have also been harassed with the tag of being quota students, and thus they need protection too. So the top court may have raised 4 larger questions of constitutional validity of UGC's new regulations, but by staying them, they've also gotten rid of some very progressive measures that were badly needed. For example, the new rules said deciding on complaints of discrimination wouldn't be left to one single faculty member anymore. Remember, both Rohith, Vemula and Payal Tadvi had complained, but they didn't get the redressal they needed. So the new rules said that the new equity committee in every institution would have to have 6 types of members, from faculty to students, and it had to have diversity, including a disabled, Dalit and women members, thereby ensuring that marginalized groups' representatives would be able to empathize and give a fair hearing to the complainant. The ad hoc nature of the 2012 rules-led committee was done away with, as now they had fixed terms. For example, the new rules forced higher education to publish biannual reports, which would give updates of all complaints and ensure transparency by having them on the website. This means that complainants who may have gathered enormous courage to go public about their harassment, they could hope that their problems wouldn't be brushed under the carpet. General category students have complained that they wouldn't be heard. They had wanted a clause inserted which punished anyone who filed a false complaint. However, the only reason this wasn't included is that discrimination is terribly hard to prove. By inserting this clause, experts feel it could discourage genuine aggrieved persons. And so while all of these new provisions logically look like they were going to make some amends for historical wrongs, they are now in abeyance at least till March. Curiously, even the champions of backward classes and Dalits like Mayawati and Akhilesh Yadav have welcomed the court's order. Mayawati cited social tension created by UGC's new rules, and Akhilesh said, "True justice does not do injustice to anyone." It's puzzling how the new rules were going to create injustice. One theory is that both Mayawati and Akhilesh Yadav are courting a rainbow coalition and thus don't want to upset upper caste segments. The Congress and the BJP have remained completely mum on this, and it's only the left and Dalit leader Chandrasekhar Azad who have come out to criticize the Supreme Court. Political reactions may be understood more clearly if we remember that UP elections are exactly a year away, and the forward caste may be smaller than backwards and Dalits in population, but they certainly have more sway.